Hey, it's been a while. I've been working some and traveling some and just haven't really had a lot of time for the YouTube thing. But I'm back today with a brand new video and I think it's something that you might be interested in. So let's get into it. So a while back, I had kind of a crazy idea and it was something I wasn't sure was going to work at all. So my idea was to see if I could shoot an entire commercial by myself. So a lot of commercials obviously have big crews, big budgets, a lot of equipment, and a lot of people. But, at its core, it's filmmaking, and filmmaking happens on a variety of scales. So what I wanted to do was strip it back to basics and try to do the entire process front to back by myself. I've had this renewed interest in kind of micro budget filmmaking recently, and while I didn't necessarily want to create a whole short film, I thought, I have a day to myself. Why don't I see if I can make a commercial? I also wanted to make it about something that I already had on hand. So what I ended up deciding on was an electric kettle that I use every day for my at-home coffee setup. And it's made by a company called Fellow, and they make some really nice coffee products that look really nice. So I thought it would make for a great product commercial. I'm also a big fan of coffee content, coffee YouTubers, and I thought it would be fun to kind of combine a couple of my passions and create a commercial for this electric kettle. So the concept I came up with was, let's show somebody on their way to work, stuck in traffic, and kind of say, like, before you hit this annoying part of your day, why not enjoy the hours that you have to yourself before that? And for me and for a lot of people, I think a big part of that is making coffee. And if you can use coffee products that look nice and feel nice and are enjoyable to use and have a nice user experience, that just elevates that time for yourself. I didn't really have a script, but what I wanted to do was just tell the story of how this product can improve your life. So the next step for me was to just go ahead and create some storyboards. So I can't draw at all. What I can do is just communicate the essential idea of what I want to accomplish with each shot and think through kind of the overall flow of the commercial. And then I had a good basis of what to do, so I went ahead and started shooting. So before we get into all of this, let's watch the commercial. It's like 20 seconds, so we'll do that real quick and be right back.
Before this part of your day, why not enjoy this part? It's the pour-over perfected with the Fellow Stag EKGK electric kettle. Only from Fellow.
So as you can see, when I said it was just me, it was really just me, including the actor. So I was doing everything from camera, set design, lighting, as well as acting. But there were a few key techniques that allowed me to pull this off with no crew and no actors. So essentially those limitations were any shot with a person in it, there was going to be no pans, no tilts, no camera movement at all, and no focus pulls. So it had to be a locked shot with locked focus. This also meant that I would be doing the action myself, so I had to roll the camera, get into place, do the action, and then cut the camera, watch playback, and kind of do that process over and over, which is honestly pretty annoying, but it's what I had to do in order to see that I was getting the shots. But by storyboarding the shots, I had a clear guideline, a clear workflow, and I knew exactly what I needed to get. So once I got each shot, I was able to just check it off and move on. So because I was doing this all myself, there's not a lot of behind the scenes content, but what I do want to do is kind of break down a couple of the key shots for you and talk about the lighting, the framing, and just kind of all of the aspects that went into creating those shots. Okay, so the first thing we can talk about is the first shot that I captured on the day. So this is the wide shot of me in my kitchen. So this is essentially what my kitchen looks like, but I did add a few extra elements to create some more interest. Mainly I moved a couple plants in. Those plants are not normally in those spots, but I thought the pops of green were a nice contrast against what's otherwise kind of a warm color palette. And then also I don't generally have the kettle and my whole coffee setup where it's at there, but I just obviously wanted it in a good spot. And these decisions in this shot really informed what the rest of the spot looked like. So lighting wise here, I'm using two lights, and these are the lights that I used for the majority of the spot. One is an Amaran F22C, which if you've watched this channel, you've seen that light a ton. It's one of my favorite lights, it's super versatile. So that's kind of our general soft source light. And then we also have a Leica or a Source 4, which is being used for some hard light. Despite shooting this midday or mid-afternoon, I really wanted to communicate an early morning feeling. So to me, that's, a hard beam of sunlight as the sun is rising coming in. So a Source 4 is a tungsten light, so it's about 3200 Kelvin. And I set the white balance in camera around 4000, so that light still read a little warm, and then it made the ambient light from outside read a little cooler. And that's a pretty good trick for creating some color contrast is, warm direct light versus cooler ambient light. I'm also shooting this on my Zeiss Jenna lenses. They're vintage lenses. This particular shot is on the 20mm, which is a pretty funky lens in my set, but it results in a lot of blooming, a lot of softness, and that creates a nice glowing image throughout. I'm also adding quite a bit of texture in post, so halation, film grain, and so you can see a lot of that here as well. So in this setup, I have both of those fixtures off to the left side of frame. The Leica is shuttered in and it's just raking across the cutting board. So I really wanted to narrow that in so that it's not hitting my face and it's not like spilling all over the place. So it's a really tight beam. And that's one of the biggest benefits of a Source 4, and it's why I use those lights all the time. Just the ability to quickly shape the beam of light and to have a really hard and precise beam of light is really, really useful. And then I'm using the Amaran F22C as a softer, almost like a fill light, and that's giving me some level on my face and kind of filling in some of the other details. And then for some of the insert shots, detail shots, I was able to use the Source 4, shuttered in, and do kind of a light sweep with it. So you can see it when I do this logo reveal here. And then I do another similar light pass across the bed of coffee as it's kind of bubbling, blooming. And that's kind of an abstract effect, but I just wanted to create some energy and motion throughout the spot when it's mostly a locked camera. Jumping into our tighter shot here of the kettle and the Chemex on the counter, it's essentially the same as the wide. So there's a hard beam of light coming through from the Source 4, and then I have the Amaran, which is filling and softening some of the shadows a little bit. Also on the right side of frame, I put one of these little Pavo tubes on the fridge. So that puts a little highlight across this otherwise black stove, and then it also gives a little bit of edge, a little bit of definition to the kettle itself. So the key with hard light here is you just want to backlight everything. Hard light can be tough to work with. As a front light, it can be really harsh, but as a backlight, it's honestly pretty beautiful a lot of times. And here it's just creating, some really nice pings of light. And I emphasize that by using a filter from Prism Lens Effects. I think it's called the Radiant FX filter. So it's a 4x5 filter that creates kind of a starburst effect over hot spots. And as you can see, that's pinging off of the Chemex really nicely. So I only use that in this shot, but it creates a really interesting burst of light in the middle of the frame. And for me, that's the benefit of doing this commercial. Like I could just experiment, do some things that I normally wouldn't do. And, I think it turned out pretty cool. So for this top-down shot, I actually just did this on the floor. So it was too hard to get the camera above the cutting board in the kitchen. So I just put the whole cutting board on the floor and tilted the camera down over top. And I think it cuts pretty nicely. So again, a similar effect here. We have the Leica, the Source 4 beaming through. And then I just added a little bit of fill back in using the Pavo tube, just so that the fall off reads nicely. Also, there are some chrome pieces on the kettle and the tube light just reflects nicely on the front side of that. So that's what I got day one. It took me kind of a full afternoon to get all of that. Like I said, starting and stopping and checking playback and all of that means that it just takes a little while to get through each shot. So I knew I still needed to get my opening shots, which were the pieces of the character, me, in the car. So I basically wanted two shots. I wanted an establishing shot of traffic and I wanted a close-up of somebody driving. My initial idea for the traffic shot was just to pull some stock footage. I was thinking like a drone shot, but then I was chatting with a couple of my friends and I realized that it would be easy enough just to go get a shot of the freeway and it would be a lot nicer than some stock footage that I would pull. So my friends were nice enough to walk over with me, help carry the tripod, and we just set up on a bridge over the freeway that's really close to my apartment. So I did a couple variations, but what I ended up using was this long lens shot of traffic coming down the 101. And I shot this on a 135, so while there wasn't really like a traffic jam or anything, the long lens kind of compressed everything and made it look like there's a lot of traffic. It's also a pretty nice view, and you can see street signs in the background, and then there's some mountains in the background. So, kind of a nice little shot of LA. And then for this close up of me in the car, I didn't have like a hostess tray or anything, and I didn't really want to set all that up. So what I did was I just put the camera on the tripod and I shot this in my driveway. So there's like a little overhang above me here, so that's creating some shade. And then the sun actually was just hitting the wall on the far side of the camera, so I was getting this really nice return. And then I just added a little bit of fill with the Amaran F22C, which I just laid on the dash, and then I could dial that up and down. When I got into post with this shot, I just added some camera shake to make it look like the vehicle is moving. I added a moving lens flare and did a little bit of magic with some masks just to create the effect of a moving vehicle. I wanted to make it look like, maybe I was passing some cars or different buildings that were reflecting light differently. So they're just some subtle exposure and masking changes that are helping kind of sell that effect. And you don't really see a lot out of the windows behind me, and it's a pretty quick shot. So I think in the flow of the commercial, it sells pretty well. So I shot this spherically, but I wanted to crop it, to 239. So that's what I did. And then because I was adding some lens flares and such in post, I was able to make those lens flares anamorphic. So it does kind of sell the effect, even though if you look closely, it's not anamorphic. So once I got into post, I did a pretty quick edit in Resolve. It's a quick spot, so really it only took me, a couple hours to edit. And then I also wrote a little voiceover and just recorded the audio in TikTok and then used one of the voice changing effects to create the voiceover. So that's literally just me talking into my phone, and then I exported that and took the audio and used it as the voiceover. So I think it worked pretty well and no one's really noticed. I'm not trying to take jobs from actors or voiceover artists, but this is just a passion project. So in this scenario, it worked pretty well for me. So after that, I hopped onto Artlist and I looked through their library until I found a song that I think worked really great for this spot. And if you subscribe to any annual plan on Artlist using the link in the description below, you'll actually get 2 months free. So that's it. That's how I created an entire commercial by myself. So will I be doing this a lot moving forward? Probably not, but like I mentioned in a lot of my other videos, just doing creative exercises in your free time is A, a really good way to practice, and B, a good way to build your portfolio. It's definitely a bit of work to do something like this, but at the end you have a finished piece that you could use to try to, get other real paying commercials. So whether you create a commercial by yourself or with some friends, or maybe you create a short film or a music video, just use the resources you have to create something and further your skills. So that's what I've got for you today. I really appreciate you watching. And, please subscribe and check out Artlist using the link in the description. All right, bye.